The Dallas Cowboys lose in embarrassing fashion to the Cardinals. What happened and where do we go from here? All that and more on this edition of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I am your host, Landon McCool. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I'm your host, Landon McCool, and we have to jump right into the stinker of a game. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's just a Landon solo podcast. No Marcus, unfortunately. He will, I'm sure, update everyone as to why he's not here. All good news, though. We're thinking about you, Marcus. So first segment we have to talk about is this defensive ineptitude. The game clearly was not the way we expected it to be. Going, especially early in the game. The Cowboys were kind of a slow start in offensively, and that's not really too shocking. But I think the thing that really, really surprised was just a complete collapse by the defense in the first half, combined with a ton of penalties, which will be something that we talk about a little bit later in the show. But let's just start with the defense, because honestly, that's where it feels like the most disappointment comes from. They come into this game as touted as one of the best defenses in the league. I mean, the best defense in the league. We're talking about one of the best defenses of all time. And this is a defense that came into Arizona and allowed 222 yards on the ground. That's 7.4 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns, while also allowing Josh Dobbs to be efficient in the passing game. The Cowboys, just especially in the first half, really just failed to kind of stop very much at all. Dobbs only had to attempt 21 passes, which is, kind of a losing formula for this Cowboys defense. They want to get these guys into passing situations, and the fact that they could only coax Dobbs to force himself to throw the football 21 times. It meant that they were having a lot of success in the ground at the point where they didn't feel like they needed to throw the football more, and it limited the opportunities for the Cowboys pass rush. And then I think ultimately the most embarrassing thing about what was happening on the defensive side of the ball early was the big plays. I mean, I pointed out 4 specifically that I felt like were absolutely enormous. Wilson's 69-yard reception in the fourth quarter, which really kind of felt like a nail in the coffin, a play for the Cowboys outside of Dak's interception, which again we will discuss later. Rondale Moore's 45-yard touchdown run. It was just a case where the Cowboys kind of got unlucky. They slanted to the opposite side of a wide zone look, and then they lost contain, and Moore was able to scamper all the way in for a touchdown. No one was able to cut him off. One of the first big plays of the game was Dobbs himself running for 44 yards. The Cowboys have got to figure out this quarterback run game. This is now one thing that, has consistently been an issue each of these weeks, is stopping a quarterback who can be a little bit mobile and getting him onto the ground. Because, look, Zach Wilson was a little bit, sneaky athleticism, if we want to say that, or, however we want to label that, the kind of athleticism that he has. Obviously, Daniel Jones has a lot of athleticism. He's a good runner of the football. And Dobbs, again, another athletic quarterback who made the Cowboys pay by trying to come, upfield too much, not, maintaining their rush lanes, not containing the quarterback, and then allowing Dobbs to kind of slip through and pick up 44 yards is absolutely ridiculous gain for a running quarterback. And then Hollywood Brown's 23-yard catch, another one that was kind of near the end of the game. He kind of felt like he kind of got away with a push off. We'll talk about penalties a little bit later too as well. I just felt like, those 4 big plays combined with a real struggle to kind of stop the Cardinals, especially, like I said, in the first half on a down by down basis, really kind of sealed the fate for the Cowboys. They weren't able to get, ball carries down to the ground. It's not like they were missing a ton of tackles. It just felt like they were being pushed out of the hole. They were taking bad angles. There were opportunities to kind of get there, but it felt like there was just a couple of situations where there were bad defensive calls, just, not that they were bad outside of context, but bad considering what the play call for the offense was. Is just, horrible luck is that sort of play calling issue. And I just felt like that the Cowboys were not able to get pressure on the quarterback the way that they needed to. Like I said, only 21 pass attempts. The Cowboys did get 2 sacks, but they didn't have a lot of QB hits, and they didn't earn the right to rush the passer, which is the biggest problem here overall. When you are allowing 222 yards, I think they had something like 170 yards in the first half. You're not setting your defense up to be able to rush the passer when you want to, and you're keeping Arizona in the game. Now, it took more than just this kind of poor defensive performance to keep Arizona in the game, but it was, it certainly was the reason that Arizona was even in this game to begin with, because the Cowboys defense was supposed to be the dominant unit in this game. They were supposed to be the ones that kind of were going to carry the Cowboys win. The Cowboys, obviously, will talk about the injuries to the offensive line and the effect that had for the Cowboys offense. But the expectation was, okay, well, the Cowboys are a more talented team. The Cowboys defense is an incredible unit. They needed to kind of come in here, step up, shut this game down, and make it easy for an offense that was, playing a little bit shorthanded. And instead, what they did is they put the Cowboys offense behind the 8 ball. They made them have to play from behind, which, the Cowboys were on their way to kind of coming back until some other second half problems with the red zone, which, again, that was what we're going to be talking about in our next segment coming up here in just a second. But last thing, I just wanted to kind of sum up with the defense. It felt like they missed Trayvon Diggs a little bit, even though it wasn't like Josh Dobbs was throwing it all over the ball, all over the field. It did feel like there was an issue with, kind of making sure that there was nowhere to throw the ball, and that we talk about that balance of pass rush and coverage, and the need to make sure that that the back end is covered tight to give that defensive line just an extra second to kind of make the quarterback hold the ball so the defensive line can get there. And it felt like when they were throwing the ball, there wasn't that, and there was not the extra second that he had to hold on. And when there was, it felt like the pass rush was not getting there. So that kind of positive feedback loop that the Cowboys defense had the previous last 2 weeks, it just didn't seem to happen this week as much. Stick with us. So we're going to come back in the next section. We're going to talk about the red zone offense and some of the issues that they had, trying to score points in once they got inside the Arizona Cardinals 10-yard line. All that and more when we get back. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your business. So you want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs, it helps you find the right people for your team faster and free. I work in IT in my real world. I'm constantly having to look for new people. LinkedIn makes it just so easy to find candidates that are qualified. That's really the biggest issue I've had at time, is finding people that are qualified. And LinkedIn is excellent about pairing you with people that are qualified for the jobs you're looking for. Add your job to the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. There's simple tools like screening questions, which are, again, excellent for people that are looking for super qualified candidates. They know what they're looking for. Make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. I think that's a big thing, hiring the right folks and making sure that you get them on your team, so that they fit in with the rest of your group, that there isn't like any personality conflicts. That's a huge part of smart hiring. LinkedIn really helps with that. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. That's LinkedIn. Welcome back. Thanks for making your Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Every dayers. Tomorrow we are going to have a show to take a deeper dive in this unfortunate Cowboys loss. It's not something we want to do, but something we have to do so we can put this thing to bed. And I think that's something that we are definitely going to want to talk about in this next segment is kind of just identifying these issues so that we can kind of talk about them, see if there are solutions that we can work on or that the Cowboys can work on, and then trying to move on. Because look, sometimes you're going to play a game like this, it's going to be a stinker. The Cowboys have played in games like this before with good teams and still bounce back. Marcus and I talked specifically about hoping that the Cowboys were kind of past this, and just not having to go through these kind of games again this year. And just, unfortunately, the Cowboys just aren't there yet. And one of the reasons that they aren't there yet was offensive red zone woes, especially in the second half. It just really felt like the Cowboys, could not score points, though they had tons of opportunities. And I think that's part of the reason that this game was so frustrating. The Cowboys offense struggled the first drive. They had a quick 3-and-out to start the game. And although the first half ended with a failed 2-minute drive, they scored 10 points on 2 drives sandwiched in between the first and last drives of the first half. But in the second half, as the Cowboys offense kind of found their footing a little bit, at least as far as trying to move the ball and kind of getting some momentum, and especially I think for those young offensive linemen, it felt like as the game went on, they started to feel a little bit more confident, a little bit comfortable with what they're being asked to do. And in the second half, the Cowboys, had 4 drives, and they engineered drives of 13 plays, 67 yards, 8 plays, 90 yards, 12 plays, 42 yards, and 13 plays, 64 yards. All 4 of those drives pierced the Arizona 10-yard line. They made it inside the Arizona 10-yard line. And the problem with that is that the Cowboys got, for all their efforts, 6 points total out of those 4 drives. And that's completely unacceptable. And that ultimately is probably why they lost this game. The Cowboys defense sort of kind of corrected the ship a little bit in the second half. They played a little bit better. I mean, they definitely still gave up big plays. They definitely still didn't do what we needed them to do, but it seemed like a lot of the bleeding had stopped and that the Cowboys offense had kind of found its footing a little bit more, and that the talent, the game script that we had kind of laid out at different points where the Cowboys talent kind of plays up to its skill set and makes the difference at the end. It seemed to be kind of on its way. And then the Cowboys were just unable to kind of do anything once they got inside the 10-yard line. And I think the thing that's most surprising is, the Cowboys were just basically unable to pass the football once they got into the 10-yard line. Dak in the second half alone was 0 for 5 with 1 interception when attempting passes inside the Arizona 10-yard line. And he was 0 for 7 overall throwing the football while inside the 10-yard line. He did have 1 10-yard pass to Jake Ferguson, but that was after the Cowboys had a penalty in that game and had brought them back out of that 10-yard line range, and really only kind of got them back. The Ferguson pass only really got them back to that original line of scrimmage. This is something that the Cowboys have got to solve. And part of me wants to say that I think the overall red zone offense is going to be better once we kind of finally ever get a more healthy offensive line. But there are also other issues here, including route concepts and inability to get open in that kind of short, condensed area. The Cowboys have got to figure something out here. They need to find a player or two that they feel like they can rely on and find ways to get them open. It's incredibly difficult when you have condensed space. There's not a lot of room to work. But the Cowboys had a noticeable advantage at wide receiver over their defensive backs and were completely unable to kind of take advantage of that. Now, the Cowboys also need to run the football better in the red zone. I think that's goes without saying, but I think it's easier to kind of overlook or dismiss some of that part because they were dealing with 3 backup offensive linemen in the game. And I think that's, a huge portion as to why they were kind of struggling to get movement, especially again in the red zone. But the passing situation, look, he was 0 for 5 with 1 interception inside the 10. In the second half, Dak was overall 13 of 17 for 147 yards everywhere else outside of those 10 yards before the goal line in Arizona. So the Cowboys have got to figure this out here, whether it's schematic, whether it's personnel, whatever it is. I think they found some success in throwing the football to the tight ends and the running backs down here, and that's where they've scored some touchdowns. But what I feel like we really are missing still is, wide receivers making plays in the red zone and finding ways to get guys open in the red zone so that they can, shake loose and make Dak's life easier. Again, we make the excuses. It's condensed down there. It's harder to kind of get the ball out and find open space because there's just physically less room down there. But the Cowboys have got to find a way to get the ball out to their playmakers. It can't just be tight ends and running backs the whole time. This is something that the Cowboys need to solve, and this is something that hopefully is not an issue long term for this team. But you worry about it, and especially since they were the number one team in the red zone last year, you hope that not all of that mojo had left with Kellen Moore, that the Cowboys are still trying to find their footing here. I do think that having a healthy offensive line is going to help here. I do think that Arizona also just played very good football inside their own 10-yard line, and hats off to them. But the Cowboys have got to solve this, because if they don't, they're going to be in real trouble. I mean, they have to find a way. If they're not going to score from outside the red zone, they've got to find a way to consistently score touchdowns inside the red zone, or their offense is really going to struggle throughout the season. Stick around. We're going to talk a little bit more about penalties, which is not ever fun necessarily, but it's something they need to clean up. And then we're also going to talk about what we can do to move on from this game and kind of get the taste out of your mouth. So come back and join us in here in just a sec. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash is the best at making sure to get your groceries when you need them. You forgot something. DoorDash is a lifesaver, especially if you've got kids. You forgot something at the grocery store. It's super convenient to be able to send out for DoorDash and have them come pick it up for you. Did you burn your last piece of toast? Did your avocados go bad? Or is the hot sauce bottle empty? That's a serious offense. If your hot sauce bottle is empty, you better have DoorDash on speed dial. Try grocery delivery from DoorDash. You'll get everything you want delivered when you need it, right to your door. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best one in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, and we'll make it right. So sit back and enjoy groceries just like you picked them up for yourself. Get 50% off your DoorDash order, up to $20 value when you use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimal subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONNFL. Don't forget the code's LOCKEDONNFL for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. All right, guys. Finally, we're going to move on with some penalty talk, and then just trying to figure out a way to kind of move past this and figure out a way to get the taste out of your mouth, the anger that's lingering. I understand the kind of vitriol that exists, especially after a tough loss like this, and the Cowboys deserve the respite. They deserve your kind of anger here. But let's talk about some positive things to kind of build on moving forward that will help us move on. But first, we got to talk about the penalties, guys. The Cowboys had 13 penalties accepted on them for 107 yards, and 10 of those penalties for 72 yards came in the first half. And that's really just terrible. You can complain about some of these absolute horrible calls. I mean, there certainly is enough to complain about. The Hollywood Brown push off, the missed safety on the holding call inside the end zone. We never really got an explanation why the refs determined that wasn't going to be holding, but apparently that's what they told Mike McCarthy, who was lobbying for that to be called holding, and for that to be a safety because it was in the end zone. Wanye Thomas offsides in the field goal is completely phantom to me. I didn't see it at all. Didn't look offsides. And then, we could talk about the extra point, which sure looked like that Prater missed it to me. It's hard to complain about, despite that, it is hard to complain about the 6 of those, 13 penalties that were pre-snap penalties. The Cowboys have got to clean that up. That's not a judgment call by the referee necessarily. Well, the Wanye offsides probably was, but outside of that, the other penalties are all, offsides. I think if I'm not mistaken, Steele had 2 false starts. I think Odigizua had 2 offsides. I think one of them may have just been declined, but it's stuff like that that you can get upset about the referees and the penalties, and that's fine. But on top of that, to have 6 pre-snap penalties, that's you're not helping your case there at all. That you're a disciplined team. Maybe the biggest swing of momentum from the penalties was the holding call on Turpin's 51-yard punt return. And according to runningbacks.don't matter.com, which that play added the most amount of win probability going in either direction. And it was a huge penalty. It completely sucked the air out of the Cowboys' chances at the moment. That it was a huge return to the game that was going to give a huge boost to the offense. It just, it got called back, and it was a huge swing. I mean, that was a 64, I think, yard return that got returned all the way back, I think, inside the Cowboys' 12-yard line. So just absolutely brutal penalties that really, really cost you points, field position, and ultimately, and on a cumulative effect, probably the game. And that's something the Cowboys have just simply got to clean up. There's just going to be games when you have bad ref crews. You're going to get some bad calls, but you can't add to that situation by having pre-snap penalties and doing stupid, dumb stuff. And it felt like the Cowboys were kind of doing that all game at a certain point. Okay, we've talked enough about the awful play. And there was that. We're going to dive into this more every day, guys. Like, you definitely come back and check us out tomorrow. We'll do the all 22. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the issues here. But I wanted to leave everyone on some positivity, because there was some positive things that come out of this game. And ultimately, the Cowboys are still where they want to be. Like, I as much as this taste is still lingering in our mouth and it's gross, and you want to spit it out, the Cowboys still have a very good chance that they go in and they can beat New England next week. They'll end September 3-1. And Marcus and I have talked about this a lot, where September is still the kind of the preseason. If you can get out of here with 2-2 or above, you're feeling good about the situation. I would love to figure out a way to get 3-1. I'd love to figure out a way to win this New England game. And if that's the case, you're still exactly where you want to be. You lost a conference game. That's not great, but there's plenty of opportunities to steal one later and turn this thing around. Just a couple of extra notes I just wanted to throw in just to kind of end on some, non-vitriol type of things about the Cowboys. I thought that the young offensive linemen, as the game went on, really started to play a lot better. I'm not shocked about TJ Bass playing better. I really do feel like this guy needs seasoning, and I think he's going to be a pretty decent offensive guard in the NFL. But I am surprised about Hoffman. I talked a lot about how I didn't feel like Brock Hoffman was an NFL center. And I felt like for the most part, he held his own. He didn't seem to be the problem, and he didn't seem to kind of get them killed. The Cowboys had a lot of issues. There's no way around it. But I also think that they had a lot of positive play from a young offensive lineman that's still kind of growing into the spot. And, as much as we are still desperate to get our starting offensive line to play a game together, it's a positive step to get your young offensive line opportunities to play in games, because you're going to need those guys at some point. And you're going to need them to come in and play big moments in big games. And so for them to get the opportunity and have it be a positive, mostly positive experience for them, I think that's really huge. And it's going to be really good for the health of this team, literally and figurative health of the team. Look, Hunter Luepke is here. He has arrived. If you guys aren't excited about it, I don't know what to tell you, but he looks like he is exactly what we hoped at fullback. He's a valuable blocker. I saw at least one or two different plays where he was the lead blocker, and he blocked multiple guys to kind of clear things up for Pollard. He had a big run for a first down and a big catch. it was good to see him starting to get used more, and I think that he clearly has rewarded the Cowboys for giving him more opportunities. I'm obviously been team fullback for a long, long time. Really have always been a big fan of this guy. So, obviously I may be a little bit biased, but I think the game showed you that this guy belongs here and that he has a little role that carved out as the kind of catch, run, block fullback who can, line up a little bit of tight end or even be a running back if you need him. So, kudos to Hunter Lipke, and I'm excited to see where this role and his play kind of continues to go. And then, as far as other guys who had nice days that are, fortunately going to kind of get lost in the wash of this loss, Gallup and Pollard both had really, really big days. I think Michael Gallup ended up just short of 100 yards receiving, but was extremely efficient. He converted a whole bunch of his targets, was able to kind of, find a way to get open and make plays and get separation and picked up a couple of big first downs, made a couple big plays. So I think that's all extremely very positive news for Gallup, a guy that, there have been questions about what his role is in this offense and where he was going to kind of fit in with everything. So for him to get in there and kind of get some catches in there was really fantastic. And then Pollard, I ended up with 120 plus yards rushing on the day. I just think that it was great to see him, kind of stretch his legs even further. It seems like every game he's getting a little bit stronger, and kind of rounding back into form. You saw a couple more big plays out of him, which was great to see. And I think that these are all really positive signs for a guy that is still, coming back from an injury. He's healthy, but it's still kind of a matter of, how much can he carry and does he start to regress at a certain point after certain touches? He ended up over 5 yards a carry, had 23 carries. So I think, especially after last week where he had something like 31 carries, it was good to see him kind of bounce back, and have another good game and not like see kind of diminishing returns after such a heavy touch game